Millionaire single dad watches waitress feed his disabled daughter and changes her life forever. The bell chimed softly as Gavin Carter stepped into the small diner, the warm scent of fresh bread and roasted coffee filling the air. It wasn't a place he usually frequented, far from the high-end restaurants where business deals were sealed over wine and perfectly plated entrees. But tonight wasn't about business. Tonight, it was about her. Lily, his 6-year-old daughter, sat beside him in her wheelchair, her small frame wrapped in a light pink coat. Her head was tilted slightly downward, fingers twitching nervously against the fabric of her dress. She sat silently, not looking around like other children might. She was simply there. It broke Gavin's heart to see her like this. The young hostess, with tired eyes, forced a smile as she approached. "Table for two?" she asked, her voice soft. "Something quiet," Gavin replied, his tone even yet firm. The hostess led them to a booth at the back, away from the din of the dinner rush. Once settled across from Lily, Gavin reached for the menu but barely glanced at it. His attention remained on his daughter. "Are you hungry, sweetheart?" he asked gently, but she didn't respond. She never did. A sense of helplessness gripped him, clawing at his chest every time he tried to connect with her. He had spent years building an empire, making impossible decisions, negotiating deals worth millions. Yet here, sitting across from his own child, he felt utterly powerless. Moments later, a waitress approached their table, a small notepad in hand. "Good evening. My name is Vanessa, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Gavin looked up, noting the warmth in her hazel eyes that contrasted with the exhaustion he often recognized in other service workers. She had a light dusting of flour on her sleeve, as if she had just stepped out of the kitchen. "What can I get started for you?" she asked, her tone light and unassuming. Gavin cleared his throat and ordered grilled chicken for himself and something soft for his daughter. Soup, perhaps. Vanessa's gaze flickered to Lily, her brow furrowing slightly. "Is she okay with chicken noodle?" "It's homemade." Gavin hesitated but nodded. "That's fine." With a smile, Vanessa replied, "Great. I'll be right back." As she walked away, Gavin scrolled through emails on his phone, but his mind was elsewhere. Would Lily eat tonight? Would she push the spoon away like always? Minutes later, Vanessa returned, placing a bowl of soup in front of Lily and grilled chicken in front of Gavin. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said before stepping away. Gavin sighed, picking up the spoon. "All right, sweetheart, let's try," he said softly, scooping a small amount of soup and bringing it toward Lily's lips. But before he could reach her, her hand jerked up, knocking the spoon away. The metal clattered against the plate, broth splattering onto the tablecloth. A few customers turned to look, and Gavin clenched his jaw, frustration tightening his chest, not at her but at himself. "Lily, please," he said, his voice softer now. But she just sat there, fingers gripping the hem of her dress, lost in a world he couldn't reach. Gavin rubbed a hand over his face, focused on not losing his patience, when he suddenly noticed someone beside him. "May I?" Vanessa asked, kneeling beside Lily, her expression unreadable. Gavin frowned. "What? May I try?" she asked again, nodding toward the spoon. Gavin hesitated, typically resistant to letting anyone else intervene. Lily wasn't a charity case. He had hired some of the best caregivers and specialists in the country, and none had gotten through to her. Yet something in Vanessa's expression, gentle but certain, made him pause. Wordlessly, he handed her the spoon. Vanessa shifted so she was at eye level with Lily. Rather than immediately bringing the spoon to the girl's lips, she spoke softly. "Hi, Lily," she said, as if speaking to an old friend. Lily didn't respond, but Vanessa didn't falter. "You know," she continued, dipping the spoon into the soup, "when I was little, my mom used to tell me that soup is like a warm hug for your tummy." She lifted the spoon slightly, but didn't force it. "Would you like to try a little hug?" Gavin watched in stunned silence, having never seen anyone speak to Lily like that, with such warmth and understanding. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, to his astonishment, Lily's fingers twitched. Gavin's breath caught in his throat as Vanessa smiled. "Just one little sip, sweetheart," she encouraged gently. Slowly, she brought the spoon to Lily's lips, and this time, she didn't pull away. The warm broth touched her lips, and after a few seconds, she swallowed. Gavin stared in disbelief. It was just a sip, but for a girl who refused food unless forced, it was everything. Then something even more incredible happened. Lily looked at Vanessa, not past her, not through her, but at her, and then she smiled. Gavin felt the world tilt. Lily hadn't smiled in years, not since her mother had died. He was momentarily lost in that moment. The diner, the other customers, the hum of conversation all faded away. There was only Lily and this woman who had somehow reached her in a way no one else had. His voice came out hoarse. "How did you do that?" Vanessa looked up at him, her hazel eyes warm but filled with something else, something unreadable. "I just spoke to her," she said simply, as if it were the easiest thing in the world. Gavin sat there, staring at the woman who had just shattered everything he thought he knew about his daughter. For the first time in a long time, he felt something stir in his chest. Hope. After their last conversation, Gavin couldn't shake the image of Vanessa kneeling beside Lily from his mind. The way she had spoken to his daughter, the way Lily had responded, it haunted him. That night, long after he had tucked Lily into bed and retreated to his study, he stared blankly at the glass of whiskey in his hand. Despite hiring specialists and therapists, none had reached Lily like Vanessa had. A waitress in a small diner had somehow broken through the barriers that had held his daughter captive for so long. The following evening, Gavin returned to the diner, which was quieter than the night before. The dinner rush had died down, and he spotted Vanessa clearing a table in the back, her sleeves rolled up, a smudge of flour on her cheek. She moved quickly and efficiently, like someone accustomed to the demands of the job. Gavin approached her directly. She looked up, startled. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice tinged with surprise. "I didn't expect to see you again." "We need to talk," he said, his tone unreadable. "I'm working," she replied, glancing at the other customers. "It won't take long," he insisted, motioning for her to follow him to the service station, away from prying eyes. Once they were alone, Gavin wasted no time. "You were incredible with Lily last night," he said, watching her reaction closely. Vanessa blinked, clearly not expecting the compliment. She shrugged. "I just treated her like a kid, not a patient." "Exactly," he replied, sensing the significance of their exchange. Silence stretched between them as he studied her, searching for something, an answer, a hint of hesitation. "You've worked with kids like her before, haven't you?" Vanessa stiffened. I just used to babysit, that's all," she said defensively. Gavin narrowed his eyes. "You're lying. I did some digging. You studied special education at NYU. You were top of your class." Vanessa's breath hitched at his words. "I don't see how that's any of your business," she said quietly, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "It is if you're the only person who's ever made my daughter smile," Gavin replied, his voice softening. He could see a flicker of pain in her eyes as she flinched at his words. I can't," Vanessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why not?" Gavin pressed, his heart racing. She shook her head, attempting to distance herself. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not the person you think I am." Gavin sighed. "Tell me why." Vanessa hesitated, her throat working as if she was struggling to swallow something heavy. Finally, she shook her head again. "I have tables to clear," she said. And just like that, she turned and walked away. Gavin watched her leave, his jaw tightening. Whatever had made Vanessa Lane walk away from the career she was meant for haunted her still, and for the first time in years, he felt a compelling need to understand why. Gavin Carter wasn't the kind of man who let things go. When something didn't make sense, he dug deeper, and when someone told him no, he found out why. He needed to uncover the mystery of Vanessa Lane. It didn't take long for him to track down her past. She had been a star student, specializing in special education and therapy. Professors had called her brilliant and compassionate, one of the most promising students they had ever seen. Then 2 years ago, she vanished. No diploma, no graduation, just disappeared. Gavin frowned as he skimmed through the reports. Why would someone walk away from something they excelled at? That's when he found it, a small obituary with the boy's face, bright-eyed and smiling. Caleb Lane, age 10. Gavin's stomach dropped. The obituary was brief, offering no details, just that the boy had passed away suddenly. But it was enough. Vanessa Lane hadn't just studied special education. She had lived it, and she had lost someone. That night, Gavin returned to the diner, not to sit at a table or order anything, but to find her. When Vanessa finally noticed him standing near the entrance, she sighed, rubbing her hand over her face. "Mr. Carter, you're back," she said, sounding weary. "We need to talk." He insisted, his voice firm yet urgent. Vanessa crossed her arms. "I thought we already did." "Not about this," he said, motioning toward the door. Her lips pressed into a tight line, but after a moment, she untied her apron and followed him outside. The night air was crisp and the street quiet, except for the occasional passing car. "I know about Caleb," Gavin said, his voice steady. Vanessa froze, her breath hitching as if he had struck her. "I know he was your brother," he continued, watching her carefully. "I know he had cerebral palsy, and I know he died." Vanessa's voice was barely audible. "You don't know anything. Why didn't you tell me?" he pressed, his heart aching for her. She let out a shaky laugh, but it lacked humor. "Because it's none of your business. That's why." Gavin took a step closer. "You walked away from something you were meant to do, and I need to know why." "Why? So you can fix me? Offer me another job? I don't want that." "I need to know because you're the only person who's ever gotten through to my daughter," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "And if you're not going to help her, I at least deserve to know why." Vanessa shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself as if holding back something painful. "Caleb was my everything," she finally confessed, her voice hollow. "My parents were never around much, so it was just me and him. I spent my whole life learning how to take care of him. I promised him I'd always be there, that no matter what, I'd help him get better." She took a shaky breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I couldn't. One night he got sick. Nothing serious at first, just a fever. But it got worse, and by the time we got him to the hospital, it was too late." Gavin swallowed hard, his heart breaking for her. "I was studying to help kids like him," she continued, her voice breaking. "I was supposed to know what to do, but I didn't. I failed him." Her eyes locked onto his, filled with pain. "And I won't fail again." Gavin stared at her, his heart pounding. This was why she had refused his offer, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much. Losing one child had shattered her, and she was terrified of getting close to another. "Vanessa, he started, but she was already stepping back. "Now you know." "Happy." Gavin didn't answer. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to say. Vanessa hadn't planned on saying yes when Gavin made the offer. She had every intention of refusing, but something in his voice, the quiet desperation behind his usually controlled demeanor, made her hesitate. Then there was Lily. Vanessa could still see the little girl's soft smile from that night at the diner, the way her eyes had focused on her, the way she had responded to his simple kindness. It had been so long since Vanessa felt like she was good at something, since she had felt needed. So, against every instinct screaming at her to walk away, she finally said, "1 week. That's all." The Carter estate was nothing like she had expected. It wasn't just a house, it was a mansion, a sleek, modern fortress tucked behind iron gates and manicured gardens. As Vanessa followed Gavin inside, she clutched the strap of her bag, taking in the towering ceilings, the marble floors, and the vast open spaces that felt too big, too empty. "This way," Gavin said, leading her down a long hallway. They stopped at a door slightly ajar. Lily's room. Vanessa stepped inside and immediately felt a lump form in her throat. It was beautiful, adorned in soft pastel colors, with shelves lined with books and stuffed animals, and a floor-to-ceiling window that let in golden afternoon light. In the center of it all, curled up in her wheelchair, was Lily. She didn't look up as they entered. Gavin exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. She's been quieter than usual since her mother passed. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in his jaw told Vanessa everything. He blamed himself. She turned back to Lily, feeling the familiar pang of sadness. She understood that feeling all too well. The first 2 days were rough. Lily acknowledged Vanessa's presence, but flinched when she tried to guide her hand toward a toy. She turned away whenever spoken to. Doubt crept into Vanessa's mind. What if she couldn't do this anymore? What if she failed Lily the way she had failed Caleb? But then, on the 3rd day, something changed. Vanessa had been reading aloud, her voice soft, even though Lily didn't seem to be listening. Just as she was about to close the book, she noticed it. Lily's fingers were tapping. It was small, barely perceptible, but it was in perfect rhythm with Vanessa's words. "You like this story, don't you?" Vanessa asked, gently, but there was no response. Still, the tapping continued, and for the first time, Vanessa felt a flicker of hope. That night, as Vanessa sat beside Lily's bed, smoothing out the blankets, she noticed that Lily's eyes were half closed, her breathing even. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she began to sing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Lily stirred slightly, but didn't pull away. This was the same lullaby she used to sing to Caleb, the one he had always asked for even on his worst days. She hadn't sung it since he died. She had promised herself she never would. But now, as she watched Lily's small fingers curl around the edge of the blanket, she couldn't stop. Outside the room, Gavin stood frozen in the hallway. He had been passing by when he heard Vanessa's voice. He had expected resistance from Lily. He had thought this experiment, this 1 week, would prove futile. But now, standing there and listening to that soft, aching lullaby, he saw something he hadn't seen in months. Lily was sleeping peacefully. No tossing, no whimpering, no haunted dreams that left her gasping for breath. Gavin swallowed hard, gripping the doorframe. For the first time since his wife's death, his daughter was at peace. And it wasn't because of him, it was because of her. Gavin Carter had spent years building an empire. He had closed deals worth millions, negotiated with some of the most ruthless businessmen in the world, and turned struggling companies into powerhouses. But none of it felt as rewarding as watching his daughter take her first steps toward trusting someone again. And it was all because of Vanessa. The changes were small at first. Gavin found himself lingering in the background whenever Vanessa worked with Lily. He told himself he was just observing, just making sure this experiment was worth it. But then he started joining in. At first, it was little things, helping Lily stack blocks, holding her hand during exercises, sitting beside her as Vanessa read stories. One afternoon, as Vanessa guided Lily through a simple stretching routine, she glanced up and saw Gavin watching. Not just watching, really watching. There was something in his expression, something soft and vulnerable. "You don't have to be here, you know," Vanessa murmured, surprised by the sudden connection she felt. Gavin didn't look away from Lily, who was gripping his fingers tightly as she tried to steady herself. "I do." Vanessa frowned. "Why?" Gavin exhaled, his gaze still on Lily. "Because I should have been here a long time ago." Something tightened in Vanessa's chest. She had assumed Gavin was just another wealthy businessman, too busy to raise his own child. But now, looking at him, really looking at him, she saw the truth. He wasn't absent because he didn't care. He was absent because he didn't know how not to be. The more time Gavin spent with them, the more Vanessa noticed him changing. He laughed more, not the polite, restrained chuckle she had heard before, but a real laugh, deep and unguarded. He learned how to soothe Lily when she was frustrated. He learned how to be present. And Vanessa, for the first time in years, felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. She had spent so long convincing herself that she wasn't meant for this anymore, that she would only fail if she tried again. But with Lily, it didn't feel like work. It felt like home. One evening, after a particularly good session, Vanessa and Gavin sat on the back patio, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Lily was already asleep inside, exhausted but happy. Vanessa sipped her tea, feeling warmth spread through her. "She's improving so much," Gavin said, his gaze distant. "Because of you," Vanessa replied, shaking her head. "I'm just helping her see what she's capable of." Gavin turned to her, his blue eyes intense. "You do that for everyone, don't you?" Vanessa blinked, surprised by his insight. "What do you mean?" You make people believe they can do things they never thought possible, he said quietly, a deeper meaning lurking beneath his words. She looked away, her heart pounding. I used to think that. Gavin studied her for a long moment. Then almost too softly he said, You still do. In that moment, everything shifted. The air thickened with unspoken words, and before she fully understood what was happening, Gavin reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. His fingers traced the back of hers, his touch light, testing. Vanessa, he murmured, searching her eyes. And then he kissed her. It wasn't urgent or demanding. It was slow and careful, as if he was giving her time to stop him. But she didn't. For one brief, stolen moment, she let herself feel the warmth of his lips, the way his hand cupped her cheek, the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. Then reality crashed in. Vanessa jerked back, her breath unsteady. Gavin's brows furrowed, confusion clouding his face. Vanessa, I can't, she whispered, standing abruptly. Gavin reached for her, but she took a step back. I'm sorry, she stammered, shaking her head. This was a mistake. His expression darkened. A mistake? Vanessa swallowed hard, panic rising in her chest. I can't do this, Gavin. Why not? Because I can't lose another person I care about. Gavin's expression softened, but she was already turning away, retreating inside, leaving him standing there with his heart pounding. For the first time in years, he realized how much he didn't want to be alone anymore. Vanessa spent the next morning wrestling with her thoughts. She had spent years building walls around herself, convincing herself that distance was safer, that caring too much only led to loss. But somehow, without even realizing it, Gavin and Lily had slipped through the cracks, and that scared her more than anything. She made her decision that morning as she walked into Gavin's office, her heart hammering against her ribs, fingers curled into tight fists at her sides. He looked up from his desk, surprised. Vanessa, he said, his voice a mix of curiosity and caution. I'm quitting, she said, the words feeling like knives in her throat. Gavin's expression darkened. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. Come again? Vanessa kept her voice steady. I can't do this anymore. Gavin's jaw clenched. Why? Because I care too much, she admitted, her voice trembling. Because I'm terrified. Because I don't know how to lose you. But she couldn't say that. Instead, she forced a small shrug. It was always temporary. I never planned on staying forever. Gavin's eyes flashed with something unreadable. That's it? You're just walking away? Vanessa nodded, even as her stomach twisted painfully. Gavin exhaled sharply, shaking his head. And what about Lily? Vanessa flinched at the mention of her name. She'll be fine. She won't, he said, his voice low and tense. You know she won't. Vanessa bit her lip, looking away. She couldn't afford to think about Lily. The way she had started reaching out, trusting again, the way her small fingers had clutched at Vanessa's sleeve just last night. If she let herself think about it, she'd break. So she forced herself to meet Gavin's gaze and delivered the cruelest blow. You just think you do. I was never supposed to be a permanent solution. You're just looking for someone to... She hesitated, then finished, replace your wife. The silence that followed was deafening. Gavin's entire body tensed, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously calm. Get out. Vanessa's throat burned. Gavin. Get out! Vanessa turned and walked away, every step feeling like it ripped her apart. Lily stopped eating 3 days after Vanessa left. She stopped playing, stopped responding, stopped smiling. Gavin tried. God, he tried. He sat with her during meals, read her favorite stories, played the games Vanessa had taught them, but it was never the same. Lily didn't look at him the way she had looked at Vanessa. She didn't light up in Vanessa's presence. And Gavin hated it. He hated that he wasn't enough, that Vanessa had walked away like they meant nothing. But most of all, he hated how much he missed her. Gavin Carter had always been a man of logic. He built his empire on cold, calculated decisions, never letting emotions cloud his judgment. But now, it wasn't enough. No amount of reasoning could fix the emptiness that Vanessa left behind. And worse, he wasn't the only one suffering. Lily was slipping away. At first, it was subtle. She refused to eat her favorite foods, turned away when Gavin tried to help her with simple tasks. She no longer reached for his hand. Then one night, he walked past her room and found her curled in a ball, silently crying into her pillow. Something inside him shattered. Gavin sat beside her, his chest tight. "Lily?" She didn't respond. He reached out, brushing her hair from her face. "Talk to me, sweetheart." Lily sniffled and whispered in a voice so quiet it almost broke him. "Where's Vanessa?" Gavin closed his eyes. He had spent weeks telling himself that he could fix this, that if he just tried hard enough, Lily would move on. But he was wrong. Because Vanessa wasn't just some temporary caregiver, she was family. And Gavin had been too blind, too stubborn, too afraid to admit how much she meant to them. The diner was busy when Gavin walked in, but he didn't care. He wasn't here for the customers, for the food, or for anything except her. This time, he wasn't alone. Lily sat in his arms, her tiny fingers gripping his coat, her face pale from weeks of sadness. Vanessa was behind the counter, scribbling on a notepad. She looked tired, thinner than before, her hair messily tied back. But when she looked up and saw them, she froze. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, Vanessa rushed around the counter, kneeling beside them. "Lily," her voice cracked, filled with emotion. "Oh, sweetheart." Lily lifted her head, staring at Vanessa as if she wasn't sure if she were real. Slowly, painfully, she reached out and touched Vanessa's cheek. The moment Vanessa felt that small, familiar warmth, the dam broke. Tears spilled down her face as she pulled Lily into her arms, holding her like she'd never let go. Gavin watched, his throat tight. Then quietly, he said the words he should have said weeks ago. "I need you, Vanessa." Vanessa stilled, her arms tightening around Lily as she looked up at him, her hazel eyes swimming with unshed tears. "I don't just need you because of Lily," he continued, his voice raw and unguarded. "I need you because of me." Vanessa's breath hitched. "I was scared," he admitted. "I was scared of letting you in, of what it would mean. But I can't." He exhaled shakily. "I can't do this without." Vanessa's lips parted, but no words came out. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him, but she was still so afraid. As if sensing the moment, Lily's small fingers curled around the spoon, trembling slightly as she lifted it toward her mouth. The dining room fell silent, every breath held as she struggled to keep her grip. Then, for the first time in her life, she fed herself, a single bite, a small, hesitant motion. But to Gavin and Vanessa, it was everything. Lily blinked in surprise, then looked up at Vanessa, her eyes wide. "You did it, sweetheart," Vanessa said, her throat tightening with emotion. Gavin let out a slow breath, a smile breaking across his face. "You really did." Lily giggled softly, a sound Gavin hadn't heard in so long. And in that moment, he knew it wasn't just about what Vanessa had done for Lily, it was about what she had done for him. For the first time since his wife's passing, he wasn't afraid of loving someone again. He reached into his pocket, his fingers tightening around the small velvet box he had been carrying for days. "Vanessa," he said, his voice steady. When she turned to him, still wiping away happy tears, he dropped to one knee. "Marry me," he said softly. Vanessa's hands flew to her mouth, shock registering on her face. Lily, completely unaware of the gravity of the moment, clapped her hands. "Vanessa, say yes." Vanessa let out a watery laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. "Gavin." Gavin reached for her hand, his touch firm and steady. "I love you," he said simply. "And I don't just want you in Lily's life. Oh, I want you in mine." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something else, something new, something safe. She let out a shaky breath, then whispered. Gavin slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as Lily cheered beside them. For the first time in years, they weren't just three broken people trying to survive. They were a family. Love isn't just about finding someone. It's about choosing them over and over again. Gavin had spent years believing that love was something he had lost forever. Vanessa had spent just as long convincing herself that love was too painful to risk again. But in the end, it wasn't about fear. It was about Lily's laughter filling their home, about Gavin finding the courage to love again, about Vanessa realizing that she wasn't destined to lose everyone she cared about. Because real love, true love, isn't just about attraction. It's about sacrifice, trust, and finding a family in the most unexpected places. In the weeks that followed their engagement, the dynamics of the Carter household shifted in ways Gavin never expected. Vanessa stepped into her role with care and determination, and slowly but surely, Lily began to thrive. Every morning, she greeted the day with a tentative smile, a sign of the bond growing between her and Vanessa. Gavin watched in awe as Vanessa worked her magic. She filled their home with laughter and warmth, using simple games and stories to engage Lily. They painted together, the colors splashing across the canvas as Lily giggled with delight. Vanessa would sing softly, her melodic voice wrapping around them like a comforting blanket, coaxing Lily out of her shell. One afternoon, Gavin found himself lingering at the doorway, watching as Vanessa read aloud Lily in the living room. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden glow around them. Lily was captivated, her eyes wide with wonder as Vanessa animatedly brought the characters to life. Gavin felt a swell of gratitude in his chest, recognizing that this was the kind of life he had always wanted for his daughter. But beneath the surface, Gavin wrestled with his own insecurities. He had spent years building walls around his heart, convinced that he could handle everything on his own. Even with Vanessa's presence, he found it difficult to let go of the past and fully embrace this new beginning. He worried that he would never be enough for either of them, that he would fail them both in some irrevocable way. One evening, after a particularly joyful day, Gavin sat with Vanessa on the back patio as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. Lily was inside, happily absorbed in her toys. Vanessa sipped her tea, her gaze lost in the distance. "Do you ever think about the future?" Gavin asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Vanessa turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "I do. I think about what it means for Lily, how she'll grow and learn. I think about us, too." Gavin felt his heart race. "What do you see?" She paused, searching for the right words. "I see a family. I see laughter, love, and challenges, but I also see us supporting each other through it all." His chest tightened at her words. "What if I mess it up? What if I can't be the father she needs?" Vanessa reached out, placing her hand over his. "You already are a wonderful father, Gavin. You love her, and that's what matters most. You're learning, just like she is. We're in this together." Gavin took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his worries lighten just a bit. "I guess I'm just afraid of losing you both." "Then let's make a promise," Vanessa said, her eyes sparkling with sincerity. "We'll communicate, no matter what. If things get tough, we face them together. I won't walk away." Gavin nodded, the warmth of her words wrapping around him like a lifeline. He squeezed her hand, feeling a sense of reassurance. They had come so far, and he was determined to embrace this journey with her. As the weeks turned into months, Vanessa continued to work with Lily, and the bond between them deepened. Lily's laughter became a constant presence in the house. She began to express herself more, her words spilling out like a river as she shared her thoughts and dreams with Vanessa. Gavin was amazed to witness the transformation. One afternoon while they were playing in the garden, Lily surprised them both by asking, "Can we plant flowers together?" Vanessa's face lit up. "Of course! What kind of flowers do you want to plant?" "Sunflowers," Lily exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. With that, they spent the afternoon digging in the soil, planting seeds, and watering the newly placed bulbs. Gavin watched with a smile, the sight filling him with a sense of hope. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the garden, they stood back to admire their work. "They'll grow tall and bright," Vanessa said, her voice filled with optimism. "Just like us," Gavin added, unable to suppress the grin on his face. In that moment, he realized that their family was not just about overcoming the past. It was about building something beautiful together. As the first flowers began to bloom, so did their relationship. Gavin found himself falling deeper in love with Vanessa, not just for the way she cared for Lily, but for the light she brought into their lives. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Lily nestled between them. Gavin turned to Vanessa, his heart full. "Thank you for being here, for being you." Vanessa smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." And for the first time in a long time, Gavin felt a sense of peace wash over him. Their family was imperfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. They were building a life together, one filled with love, laughter, and the promise of brighter days ahead. As the nights passed, Gavin's fears began to fade, replaced by an unshakable belief in their future. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united as a family. Love had found its way back into their lives, and it was stronger than ever. As the seasons changed, so did the lives of Gavin, Vanessa, and Lily. Their home, once filled with silence and sorrow, now echoed with laughter and joy. Each day brought new milestones, and Gavin found himself marveling at the transformation of his daughter and the relationship blossoming between her and Vanessa. One sunny Saturday morning, Gavin woke up to the sound of giggles coming from the kitchen. He rubbed his eyes and smiled, chuckling to himself as he made his way downstairs. When he entered the kitchen, he found Lily and Vanessa standing by the counter, flour dusting their faces as they attempted to bake cookies. "Good morning," Vanessa called out, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "We might have made a bit of a mess." Gavin laughed, taking in the scene. "Looks like you two are having fun." "Can you help us, Daddy?" Lily piped up, her face lighting up with excitement. "Of course," Gavin replied, stepping into the kitchen and rolling up his sleeves. They spent the next hour mixing ingredients, laughing at their flour fights, and enjoying the sweet aroma of cookies baking in the oven. As they waited for the cookies to cool, they gathered in the living room, where Gavin decided it was time for a family meeting. "I know we've been busy, but I want to make sure we have time for each other," he began, looking at both Lily and Vanessa. "So, how about we plan a family outing next weekend?" Lily's eyes widened with excitement. "Can we go to the zoo?" "Great idea!" Vanessa exclaimed, her enthusiasm matching Lily's. "We can see all the animals and have a picnic." Gavin nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. "It's settled then. The zoo it is." As the week passed, they eagerly prepared for their outing, discussing the animals they wanted to see and the picnic treats they would pack. Gavin found himself reveling in the anticipation, his heart swelling with happiness at the thought of spending quality time as a family. Finally, the day of the zoo arrived. They packed a bright red picnic basket filled with sandwiches, fruit, and cookies, each member contributing their favorite items. When they arrived, Lily's face lit up with pure joy as they entered the zoo. "Look at all the animals," she squealed, tugging on Vanessa's hand as they walked through the gates. Gavin watched with a smile as Vanessa knelt down to Lily's level, pointing out the various exhibits. "What do you want to see first?" she asked, her voice filled with warmth. Lily, her eyes sparkling, shouted, "The elephants!" They made their way to the elephant enclosure, where the gentle giants played with each other. Gavin took a moment to capture the scene, his heart swelling with gratitude. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt this content. After exploring the zoo, they found a shady spot under a large tree for their picnic. As they spread out the blanket and unpacked their food, Gavin couldn't help but admire Vanessa. She interacted effortlessly with Lily, making her laugh and feel special. "Thank you for today, Vanessa," Gavin said, his voice sincere. "You're amazing with her." Vanessa smiled, her cheeks slightly flushed. "I'm just happy to be here. Lily is such a joy." Lily chimed in, her mouth full of cookie. Vanessa is the best. The three of them laughed, and in that moment, Gavin felt a sense of belonging he hadn't experienced in years. They finished their picnic, sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. As they packed up to leave, Gavin felt a wave of happiness wash over him. The day had been perfect, filled with laughter and love. In the months that followed, their bond only deepened. Gavin continued to see the positive changes in Lily. She was more engaged, more expressive, and more confident. With Vanessa by her side, she was flourishing in ways Gavin had only dreamed of. One evening, as they sat together on the couch watching a movie, Gavin noticed Lily snuggling closer to Vanessa. His heart swelled with warmth as he observed the way Vanessa instinctively wrapped her arms around Lily, holding her close. "Do you think she knows how much we love her?" Gavin asked softly, glancing at Vanessa. "I think she does," Vanessa replied, her eyes filled with affection. "She feels safe with us." Gavin nodded, a sense of peace washing over him. He realized that they'd created a home filled with love, laughter, and support, a place where they could all heal and grow together. As the night drew to a close, Gavin knew they were on the right path. They had faced their fears, embraced their pasts, and built a future filled with hope. In that moment, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey they had undertaken together. They were no longer three broken individuals. They were a family, bound by love and commitment. With a smile, Gavin turned off the television and pulled Lily and Vanessa closer, savoring the warmth of their embrace. Love had found its way back into their lives, and together they would face whatever the future held.